Hello and welcome to All Today. This week will be slightly different, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But before we do so, let's introduce everyone. Cheston, how are you doing today?
It's different because I'm naked.
That's different. I'm always
Congrats.
naked for the podcast.
Yes, I am here to party.
I do it from a bathtub.
Yeah, I am okay. I am in a bit of a quandary. I'm gonna see if you can relate to this quandary.
Yeah.
Have you ever bought a pack of adult beverages that is a mix of different flavors?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the problem with the mix is that usually it's a decent deal. I got 15 for $13 at the local Costco.
That's a pretty good deal.
That is, but 60% of the flavor is delicious, and 40% is a kind you would never, ever, ever buy, and you probably would never even drink unless you already had it in your house. So, do you have a strategy for disposing of these? Like, do you go for the ones you like first, or do you go for the ones that you don't want first, just to get them out of the way?
My strategy has been to get tipsy enough where I don't care what I'm drinking next, and then it's
Okay.
just the bad ones aren't so bad after that.
Okay, that's smart.
Depends. How bad is it? Like, is it undrinkable bad or just
No, it's like, okay, so you have like an IPA that's pretty good. You have a very traditional ale that is delicious. You have a vanilla porter of some sort that's pretty good. And then you've got two fruity beers that are like, you got some pineapple in one and the other's like strawberry, so they're not undrinkable, but it's not what I'm looking for, So my strategy is usually that I buy them and then I feel guilty when I only drink the ones I like, and then I get to the point where I only have 6 beers I really don't want, but I drink them anyways because I'm a degenerate. But it's a very tricky balance to maintain. It's like I feel like I'm min-maxing my destructive behaviors.
The other tactic would be to have a gathering and tell people to drink, whatever they want.
Yeah, but see what happens is whenever I have people over like you, everybody acts all sober and Protestant, so the only person who ever gets a drink is me. And then I drink what I want.
That's not how I remember it. I mean, I guess times have changed.
I don't really drink very much.
That's right. Derek is straight edge.
No, I just
Anime is not straight edge. Don't kid yourself.
That's true. Anime CM Punk is very against anime.
When I'm at your house and you're like, I want to get a beer, I tend to have one. When
well, I'm not saying I would never. I wouldn't. I wouldn't ever force you to even have one.
But I'm saying, you have like a couple people over, have what you want, and then push the crap you don't want to the front of the fridge. And,
yeah.
and that way they are like, because when I'm at a person's house, I'm not digging through their fridge. I'll just take what's up front. And so, the good stuff's in the back. So you grab the good stuff while your buddies grab the crappy stuff.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to our main story this week, which is that my refrigerator is broken. So.
Oh no.
And unbelievably, the freezer and refrigerator both broke yesterday, and it is a unique hell to live in.
Ugh.
On the bright side, mini refrigerators are based.
Yes, they
I'm just
are.
going to say it. My mini refrigerator has come in handy, and also, putting canned beverages in a cooler full of ice is perhaps the best way to consume them.
Why?
It cools them a lot more effectively, so it's a nice frosty beverage when you pull it out. Like a Coke Zero coming out of that cooler is just fire, as the kids would say. Yeah, so that's my life, and like I said, I'm naked, so I don't know. Setzer, you got anything fun happening?
Yeah, the second man here, Setzer, how you doing?
Good, yeah.
No fridge antics?
No fridge antics. No, I gonna be moving across town soon to a place without AC. So
what? Oh, that's right. Oh.
Yeah. I've been looking at space coolers rather than food coolers myself.
No.
I should look into that. I've got a space heater, but no space cooler.
Oh, yes. Is that a thing? A space cooler?
I never heard of it. But
really? Fascinating.
Induction cooling.
Really?
Yeah, since I live in a super dry climate now, You can use induction cooling out here, which is apparently very effective.
That might have come in handy when we were at our apartment in the mountains and had no AC up there.
Yeah, there was an article in the paper, which only I read because I work on one, that said, like, is AC mandatory now in Colorado? Yep, it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the days of that are long, long past, I'm afraid.
Well, when we first moved here, it wasn't, well, whatever.
I mean, I feel like it really was long past, but you have a lot of like holdouts who are from like the 70s probably, like, oh man, just open the window. Let the hot air in.
Yeah, let that 90-degree air in.
Oh, fuck. It's 100 degrees in the shade. Yeah, it's hot. It is hot. Yes, I love and hate this climate. So, winter's nice, though. Winter's nice.
It is coming, allegedly.
Along with the new Game of Thrones show.
Yes, that's no one will watch.
No, I'm gonna watch it.
Good for you.
Yep.
So what's the lowdown on that new show then?
I don't know. I saw a trailer for it and I said, oh, I guess I'll watch it.
It's about Targaryens.
Yeah, it's another Targaryen story. I think it's like the...
Oh, boy.
What's the...
They're like the elves of that.
It's like it's a female Targaryen.
Wow.
So it's basically just redoing the Daenerys thing, but it's in the past, so it's a prequel. What is her... I don't remember. I guess maybe I should rewatch the original show. I should rewatch the original show and stop 2 episodes into the final season.
They stop after 4 seasons.
No, it's good. Shut up.
You can assume when Joffrey dies as the series finale. Like,
shut
everything
up.
was great.
Oh, you're ridiculous.
Now, as for me, this is Derek. I'm okay. So what makes this week different is that usually we talk about what games we're playing in the news, but back when the podcast began, we talked about how we wanted to do occasional like special episodes, stuff that's off the beaten path, and we haven't really been doing that. So we decided to get that kicked off starting today. This week we're going to kind of do a roundtable on mechanics and that sort of thing in video games we do not like. And at the end of our little roundtable, we will nominate what is the worst and put it in our hall of shame.
We should specify it's mechanics, not the games that we don't like, because I like many of these games, but I don't like many of these mechanics.
Yes, even great games are bogged down by bad mechanics. And this is something that is universal across the spectrum. A masterpiece can have them, a disaster piece can have them. Why not just break them down and see what we don't like? So, since this was, I believe, a Cheston idea, this particular topic, why don't you get us kicked off?
Well, I would be happy to. So, we are going to each mention 2. We'll take turns, much like we would around the Christmas table. Christmas table? What? Okay, well, yeah, like you would at Christmas, taking turns opening gifts. Except for these gifts are full of shit. So, it's more like shitsmas. Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Now that's funny.
Okay. Anyways, I'm going to start with something a little low-key. No pun intended.
4?
What? Oh, I guess... Screw you and your Marvel bullshit.
No, that's Norse
I know you are
bullshit.
Captain Marvel over here. You love Marvel. You and Goose get together and wank to your Ant-Man
we watched
biopics.
San Diego Comic-Con and started masturbating furiously.
Yes, well, I mean, the world's largest mass masturbation event. It caused seismic activity that rivaled the San Francisco earthquake.
Yes.
Oh, God, what's that sound? Oh, why is the ground shaking? All right, well, anyways, that aside, heavily masturbating aside, something I don't want to jerk off to in games is a thing that I want to say really peaked in the 360 and PS3 era. And I don't really know why, but I could theorize that it was because at the time, gaming was changing and the audience that games were targeted towards was changing too. And I think they were competing with a lot more stimuli. Phones, smartphones were coming into their own. You had a lot of people like kind of multitasking while they played. And at the same time, I know that achievements came around, and achievements tended to show that a lot of people didn't finish games. And my guess is that this kind of arose out of the idea that we need to keep people constantly engaged in our games so they actually see them through to the finish and they don't take them to GameStop. So I am talking about lockpicking and hacking minigames. And some of them that come to my mind off the top of my head, recently, not PS3 360 era, the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga game has a hacking minigame when you control R2-D2 or C-3PO or any other droid who can hack into terminals.
Ugh.
And it's basically the world's easiest puzzle. And to me, it only exists to add an extra few seconds onto your experience. It does not add anything other than, you get the satisfaction of solving the world's easiest puzzle. Some older examples, I thought of Bioshock. Bioshock, I don't know if it was hacking. And Setzer, you played pretty recently. It's those pipe mini games. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. I was actually thinking of that.
Yeah, and the other game I thought of was Mass Effect, which has the first Mass Effect has a lot of these when you're opening doors and it's almost like a Simon Says thing. And in pretty much every one of these cases, it's really stupid easy. It's not like a very hard thing. There's not like any hacking puzzles that just had me in fits. It just always felt very superfluous, and the time it took away from the experience, I did not feel was worthwhile. I would be much more in favor of just automating it. Like if my character is a thief, they can just lockpick doors when you press the triangle button. If my character is a computer hacker and maybe it's a game like Outer Worlds, and I've spec'd their stat in a certain direction, I just press this button and I've hacked this terminal. I really don't need to see all of the odds and ends that go into the hacking or lockpicking. I just need to do it. I mean, there are exceptions. I think Prey has some pretty interesting stuff, be it with hacking, with those terminals. But I think that's a very unique case. No, you don't even agree with that.
No, I mean, are we talking about the same Prey 2017? Where you have to move the ball through the maze?
I am not talking about Prey 2007 or 6 or whatever it is. Maybe I'm thinking maybe I haven't gotten to some of the puzzles you did, because I famously did not get very far in Prey. I'm just thinking of like when you walk around, you have those authentic interfaces on the computers. Maybe I didn't do any actual hacking, I suppose.
Yeah, that's not the hacking minigame in Prey. In the hacking minigame in Prey is like you have to navigate a circle through a maze to a destination within a time limit, and if you touch the walls, it bounces your circle around. And it's like a very tight time limit. You have to do multiple mazes. Yeah, it's awful. That's like one of my least favorite ones, and probably my least favorite part of that game.
Well, see, there you go. Bad mechanic. Yeah. Don't like it.
Agreed.
I feel like this is very much a Western games problem. Like, when I think lockpicking, I go back to, doesn't Skyrim have a fairly involved lockpicking game?
Yep.
Right? And Oblivion and those kind of games. It's not a mechanic that I personally have to engage in very much. But whenever I do, I just can't make heads or tails of who this appeals to and why they continue to cram this garbage into otherwise perfectly fine games. We automate so many other things that your character does, and we don't really care about it. But for some reason, this is the one where it's like, well, they have to see how they hack it. I mean, you can't just hack the terminal.
I feel like Fallout gets kind of close to my ideal version of it, where it's just like a stat check, where it's just like, you're at this stat, just open it or whatever.
Yeah, doesn't Outer Worlds do that too?
But you still have to do the minigame if you pass the stat check. So I'm saying, like, just get rid of the minigame. Just let me open my stuff.
Well, and doesn't Mass Effect have, like, you can use your Omnigel to do it? I guess.
Yeah.
But it's so easy that it's like, well, I don't really want to waste this Omnigel on this hacking minigame, but at the same time, I don't want to play Simon Says.
At least the Simon Says minigame in Mass Effect 1 is like 5 seconds. It is a short...
It is, but it's like, I don't know, to me it just really bogs down the pacing of the experience. Like, imagine if you were watching a movie and a character's like, oh, wait, hold on a minute. Okay, alright, so I gotta match up the green dot to this spot. Can you? Ah, shit. Oh, damn it. Fuck.
Well, that scene was in Rise of Skywalker.
That's a bad movie.
No, but Mass Effect 2 has like 3 versions of the game that are long, kind of not fun, like the matching, the tubes, and the code work. They're not. I shouldn't say they're lengthy, but they're just like tedious. And
yeah, you know what actually made me think of these? Because I was really scratching my head because I feel like a lot of mine, I didn't want to just pick on RPGs too much because pretty much all of mine are things from RPGs that have made their way into other genres that I don't like. And I was actually thinking of wrestling games and how in this same era they decided that you couldn't just do things like reach for a belt in a ladder match or do a submission hold without doing a goddamn mini game first.
yeah, it's
And
obnoxious.
it's such a plague of the era.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's bad now. I really can't think of a lot of modern games that I play, but I mostly play baby games. So I don't know if you adults have seen anything out in the PC landscape.
Well, it kind of reminds me of there was an era when developers were trying to get the most out of the right analog stick, like it was the Buffalo.
Ah, yes.
And I really hated that because I feel like the right analog stick is perfect for the camera, and that is it. But they kept trying to do things with it. I'm like, this sucks. Eventually, we got away from that, and
It's like proto motion controls. It was like our controls are not intuitive enough for your layman, so we need to translate it to something that's or make it something that's easy to translate. Well, what if the right stick did all these things? Oh, but we use that for camera. Who fuck cares? We'll just make a bunch of fixed camera games. That's great.
it was particularly heinous in sports games.
Oh, I think it still is. I think that still is a thing.
The only time the right stick has ever been good was Ape Escape. That's the only time when it's like should not be the camera.
You mean like the first use for the right stick?
Yes, that is it though. That is not the topic we are talking about though. So.
I mean, we certainly could, but it's not really a problem anymore. So
it's not a problem. That
Right.
solves itself. Like yours, hopefully, will at some point.
I mean, are there any good? Like, I want to offer counterpoints to some of these. Are there good examples of lock picking or hacking mini games that don't suck?
No.
So I like the way Deathloop did it, which is that you find the thing you want to hack, you pull out the hacking device, you hold the button, and that's that. Bar fills up and you're done.
That's true, and it also keeps in spirit with the gameplay because you're trying to like not get spotted or whatever while you're hacking. You don't have to suspend your disbelief that you're like on a computer in the middle of like enemy fire and hacking away, and there's like, okay, go on with it.
I guess I don't hate the Batman Arkham games. You know, they had those little things where you'd like adjust these frequencies or yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe those do suck.
I don't hate it.
They make sense. They make more sense in universe. Like you would totally see Batman do that in a movie.
Yeah.
But I guess sometimes it is a little
like tedious.
Yeah, it is a little tedious, I suppose. Like I said, I play Nintendo games mostly, and I can't think of a lot of like weird mini games they've designed to get around like very mundane tasks. I mean, most of their like cooking in Breath of the Wild, you don't have to stir the pot. You put the food in the pot.
That reminds me
of
of
funny animation.
Making poffins in Pokemon.
Yeah, I guess that sucks. That does suck. See, but I'm trying to think of good ones, and I'm just thinking of more ones that I don't like in Pokemon Sword and Shield when you make curry. I don't like that.
Well, I think we've discovered that there are no good ones. The only option is to skip it.
Yeah, I really do think that skipping it is the proper solution. I think that I'd love to see that more. Again, if your character's a thief, I don't need to see them pick a lock. If Nathan Drake wants to pick a lock, far be it for me to tut him about how he does it.
Yeah, he's the master thief.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't care. I'm not simulating a thief. You know?
I do not get my jollies by jiggling around a stupid toothpick. Or not a toothpick, it's like usually like a bobby pin and some kind of like lever or something, you know, to jimmy the mechanism. There's one of those that's really bad. I'm trying to think what game it is, but I hate it. Oh, it's so bad. It's like you individually control each part. Like you control the bobby pin and you control like the lever with one stick each. Is that Skyrim?
I think that might be Skyrim. I mean, I know what kind of thing you're talking about.
Oh, I just hate it so. Oh, I just hate it so much.
Wow, I watched my wife play Kingdom Come Deliverance, and that has like the worst lockpicking mechanic. It involves like it felt like bouncing on your head trying to get a door unlocked. It was just too much.
Well, I think anything is too much. But that's my first nominee. Lockpicking hacking, I think, sucks.
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. One thing I did want to point out about that phenomena, you asked if I saw a lot of those in PC games, mostly in console ports, right?
Mm.
And what stands out to me is the hacking minigame is often changed. So, you mentioned in Mass Effect, they had the Simon Says. That was the console version. On PC, they had a different minigame where you had these like rotating concentric circles with gaps in them, and you had to guide a cursor through the gaps into the center.
Yeah, because I played it on PC as well once. I do remember those.
Yeah. So it's like, they knew that those minigames were kind of boring and stupid and not really PC appropriate, but they didn't want to take them out. So they just went through the trouble of making this whole new game that also sucks.
I've seen that one used a few other places. That reminds me, my least favorite wrestling minigame ever. Derek, do you remember in the ladder matches when they made it so that, kind of like what Setzer was just saying, you had like a spinning wheel and you had a little circle and you had to press the button so that the circle jumps into the wheel at the right time?
I hated that.
Oh my god.
It's maddening.
And it just like totally ruins the immersion because you could have a guy up there for minutes hanging on to the belt. Like, is he just dumb? Why can't he unhook the belt?
I don't know what was wrong with the mashing when they first introduced it.
I would even say just make it like and this is probably not very popular because it wouldn't be very interactive, but have some underlying math, like, okay, this is what time it is in the match, this is what health percentage this person is at, so when they press the button, it's going to take X amount of time to get it, and if nobody gets them by then, they just take it.
Yeah, you're right, because that would kind of suck. You're in there for like 20 minutes, and then like, oh, you got up there and immediately it's gone.
Well, that's what would happen. That's how that would work.
I mean, it's better than the mini games, so
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I'll take that. I have all day over that. So
yeah, all of the day.
Yeah, exactly, all of the day over it.
Well, Derek, who should go next? Who should open their shitty present next?
I was gonna say, Setzer, why don't you go ahead?
All right, which one should I pick first? I'm gonna say deck building. Deck building. I think that'll be an interesting one to talk about because Cheston, I know you love card games.
No, but I'm flattered that you mentioned me.
I like some. I like Chain of Memories, which is one that people don't like.
So. God, that's like the worst one. What are you doing? You're just giving him ammunition.
But I don't like deck building for 3 big reasons, okay? Number 1, it encourages RNG, it injects RNG and luck-based gameplay into what should oftentimes be a skill-based game. I think that you take the ultimate skill-based game, chess, right? You don't start the game with, like, nothing but pawns, a rook, and 3 knights, and then, your opponent starts with all queens. That would be a bullshit game. Deck building, it's the same thing to me. It's luck of the draw, And yeah, there's something to be said for strategic improvisation under unpredictable circumstances, but, it's inherently not a level playing field. And that kind of ties into reason number 2, right? Which is that you have this massive upfront time investment to make a good deck. You can walk into a game, one of these games, and basically you've already lost, right? Because you didn't bring the precision engineered deck that your opponent has. And really, I think that kind of time investment where you're just thinking about a game rather than playing a game is boring, to me at least.
That's true, because at some point you're like, all right, I've had enough setup. I want to actually get the play in here. I can see that. And
finally, I think that deck building mechanics outside of card games have become like bizarrely abstract. What stands out to me, the example that always stands out to me is Back 4 Blood, where it's like, Left 4 Dead, it's like a zombie shooter, but you're drawing cards.
Wait, did you play Back 4 Blood?
I didn't play it.
Okay.
No, I have no interest in playing it, but
No, it's
I
terrible.
was one of the reasons I was uninterested in it is because, it's like a zombie shooter and you've got to draw cards like, oh, here's your baseball bat card. Now you have a baseball bat. Oh, here's your med pack card, right?
I mean, that one is even worse because so you go into that game as someone who did play it. You go into that game expecting Left 4 Dead because that's all the marketing showed you. And then they just start throwing all of these card mechanics at you immediately, and they do not explain them well. It's just like, well, okay, pick your 3 cards you're going to start with. With cards, the hell are you talking about? I thought I was going to play Left 4 Dead. And they just kind of they just like throw so much at you at the start.
And is that not like a maximally abstract way of handling objects in an environment? Right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the games lean on it as a way to encourage replay without actually making replay valuable. It's like, well, you should play this again because last time you had this shitty deck. So next time, if you play more, you'll get a less shitty deck, and then you'll have a better experience.
Yeah, I think that, a running theme and things that I dislike is unnecessary time wasters. And much like the hacking minigame is just, it exists to waste your time and make you play longer. So does collecting these goddamn cards, right?
It is the latest and most annoying way to keep people who buy physical copies of games a dramatically shrinking audience from reselling their stuff. Or from just keeping you in their ecosystem because they have microtransactions.
Yes, I mean, I think it's really about keeping you in the ecosystem, occupying more of your mind space with like, oh, how am I going to build these decks if I combo these cards and then I draw that,
I would say that my feelings on deck builders are complicated because I came to them from board games. Because I got into board games for a good while there, and a lot of big popular board games these days are deck builders. And I think a well-built deck builder can be pretty fun. That being said, of course, your first time playing, like you said, it is pretty abstract and, it is often intimidating because you're having to make decisions that have so many ramifications down the road that you have no way of knowing how they're going to impact you. That kind of stuff can be intimidating. But I think some board games do a good job with that. Have you ever played Clank or Clank in Space?
No, I'm not a big board game guy. Oh. I mostly play RPGs, tabletop RPGs, right?
Okay. All right. Well, I think those can be okay. In the video game space, I certainly think they are overdone. I think they are a crutch. As we said, to keep you in an ecosystem, to keep you with a certain game. A lot of times it's like you start off with a bad deck, and the reason that you can't finish the game isn't because you don't know what you're doing, it's because you started with a bad deck. And the more you play, the better cards you get. And, you might figure out what to do way, way early into a game, and then have a 20-hour grind of building decks ahead of you. Which is not my idea of a good time. For me, the deck builders that I'm okay with is as long as the deck builder allows you to... Okay, one, I don't like it when it's super persistent. So if it's a deck builder that's run-based, if each run is independent of one another, to me that makes it seem less likely that you're going to have a situation where you just always have bad runs to start. So like Dicey Dungeons... Every run is independent of the one before it. You do not unlock anything as you play. You just get extra cards, but every run starts fresh. So if you know what you're doing and you're skilled, every run you're going to get pretty far because you know what to do, and you're going to get to the point where you get the better cards. It progresses like a natural video game. And Slay the Spire is pretty similar, I think, in that way. Every run is independent, so you're not just adding stuff to your deck that makes the experience easier next time. So you don't necessarily have to have a bad first run. As far as the RNG goes, I also don't mind that as long as the game includes many ways to mitigate it, as the two I just mentioned do. So like Dicey Dungeons, there isn't as much RNG because your deck is always active. You're not drawing from a deck. Your deck is always in front of you, and you can use anything in your deck at any time. the RNG comes with the dice rolling, but a lot of your abilities allow you to manage those dice rolls to do what you want. So if you know your way around that game, you're going to be able to make it your bitch. And it's not going to be a matter of, well, I rolled a 2, so I guess I'm just SOL. I mean, that could happen every so often, but it is low probability when you get good at the game. And I think I've never gotten good at Slay the Spire, but the impression I've gotten from playing it as someone who sucks at it is that most of my issues are my own doing and not the game screwing me over in any particular way.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the RNG of like drawing cards from the deck and the RNG of like, you open a booster pack and you get random cards. I think that that's just too much RNG for me.
I can see that. I mean, I do think at some point you are using that again as a way to pad the experience. It's not, you don't have there's no altruistic intent there. It's not like, well, this is going to provide for a better experience. It's like, well,
try it again.
If they have too much luck, they're just going to tell everybody on Steam that this game sucks. So we need to throw something in there. Hey, is Darkest Dungeon the worst example of this? Is that a deck builder?
I would say it has deck building adjacent elements, because even though you don't have, from my memory, this is a game I notoriously dislike, but from my memory, you don't have cards per se, but you're putting together like a roster of characters.
Yeah.
And I guess those are comparable to cards, but I wouldn't say it really falls under this umbrella. Which leads into what I was going to say, which is that I should clarify, this is not about presenting information in a card-like format. This is about the front-loaded time investment of building a deck, the RNG of drawing cards from a deck, and how wildly disconnected and abstract those mechanics become when you take them out of a dedicated genre card game, right? Cards are a great way to, compartmentalize information in UI design, but not so much when it's like random mechanics, right?
Is this like a way of saying that Phantasy Star Episode 3 is bad?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 CARD Revolution is one of the few card games I actually have enjoyed. And I think one of the reasons for that is because you have, yes, you do have to put up with the time investment and RNG, but you also have it as part of this tactical grid-based game, and I really enjoy games like that. So, I think that makes it a little more tolerable for me. And also, I'll just say it, I'm a sucker for that late 90s, early 2000s RPG aesthetic. So
it's the best, isn't it?
Yeah.
I really like the older ones. I like the Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy Color, because it's just the Pokemon trading card game.
See, isn't that game built in a way where you are getting cards as you progress in a natural way? So it's not like, well, I got the Charizard card after the first gym. Well, I guess I'm just going to blow through the game.
You do get booster packs, and you can get one of the starter decks does have Charizard in it.
Okay.
But there are legendary cards that you only get as you progress. But
or are you gonna get cards that are just like, oh, fuck you, you got a Clefairy. That's it.
Well, I think you can. It's a trading card game, so
yeah, I guess. That's
so
true.
you get booster packs, and you just. But I mean, but from what Setzer was saying, it seems like he just doesn't like TCG style stuff. So that wouldn't be up his alley, because it involves building customized decks for specific gyms and maybe losing a couple times and having to reconfigure.
If I recall, was there not a time where Setzer enjoyed Hearthstone? And is this part of what caused this falling out with the deck building genre?
No, I did play Hearthstone when it was in beta, because I was just curious, because I don't, knowing that I dislike these kinds of games, I don't have a ton of experience with them. And when Hearthstone was in beta, this was before Blizzard's fall from grace, right? So I was cautiously optimistic, and one of my buddies in undergrad got into the beta and let me use his account. So I think I played a handful of games of Hearthstone in my life before deciding it was not for me. So
okay.
No, there was not a time where I was a big Hearthstone head.
A Hearthstoner.
Yes, yeah.
And what I like about Chain of Memories is that
Oh my god.
Here we go.
I never had to like go through that failing phase and where you're losing and everything sucks. Like I always felt like I had a deck. I kind of kept it relatively consistent. I sometimes added new cards, but you just go through your cards and use it. What attack is good in what situation. I don't really feel like there's much luck involved in that game.
Well, to its credit, that game again it sets you up to succeed. It does not set you up to fail. But I think in this case, Setzer is specifically pointing at games that one way or another set you up to fail with your deck.
Yeah, so I was saying like that's like an example of it that doesn't. Like
yeah, it's true. But the game itself is bad, so
no, it's fine. And Riku's one doesn't even involve deck building; just give you cards and say this is what you got to deal with, figure it out. And I like that too because it's like a puzzle. Each fight is just you got to figure out what to do in your situation. So
well, I would like that because I don't have a deck builder brain, and so like when it asks me to put together a deck that will be effective, I'm like, I don't know.
like nope, that's okay.
I like these cards. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, so I guess for me, I want to talk about odd number stats on gear.
Such an odd one, but I like it.
So I hate when I am playing a game and the gear is like, you have 45 armor, which is fine, and then plus 0.4% to lightning damage, plus 2.5% to poison resistance, that sort of thing. When I see those numbers, my brain shuts off and says, oh, I don't care anymore. And I just hit optimize equipment. I'm not going to do like the math in my head to figure out what armor is best in what situation. It's just too agonizing and not fun. So I'll just go for what's best. It was particularly bad in Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins because that game threw gear at you like it was going out of style. Like you have like a cap of, I think, 300 pieces of gear that you can have on you at one time, and that cap is constantly being hit all the time. And all the gear has the same stupid like plus 50%, or not 50% would be okay, plus 22% to this random stat, and I just don't care. I would make this personally like you get a gear, got a base number, and then it has like a specialty, like you get no poison damage or no lightning damage for this piece of gear. The percentage stuff I just hate. It's just a curse.
Well, it's not even odd numbers; it's just numbers.
Yes, it's just like I just turn my brain off. It's just too much math.
Some games do it really poorly. They're just like 0.5% to accuracy.
It's really bad in like
who cares about
Western
0.5% accuracy?
Like Horizon Zero Dawn does this too.
Yeah.
Or it's just like here you got 4% to reload arrow speed. Like, okay, is it something I'm going to even notice in game? I mean, not really, unless I spend like 100 hours using a specific set of gear and change it.
I think you have to be the ultimate pedantic math person to be like, oh, hell yeah, 4%. Oh, shit. Buddy, I'm doing 4% more damage than you.
You have to be one of those weirdos that counts frames that can kind of see it. I don't know. How do you guys feel about this?
So I hate this for the reasons you listed, and also for another reason that I think all of us, looking at our list here, all of us have something that's kind of adjacent to this. It doesn't give you a qualitative change in your gameplay, right? 0.4% poison resistance is totally worthless.
Yeah.
Yes. It's negligible in a lot of games. Poison is, such a specific circumstance that even if you had 100% poison resistance, most of the time that's not really impacting your experience. And if you do put in specific areas where poison is prominent, then you're running the risk of forcing players into a specific poison resistance playstyle they might not like, right?
Right.
So really, my beef with these kinds of stats is primarily that you go through all this trouble of creating this little system, but what is it really qualitatively giving to the player? What kind of novelty and stylistic control and expression is it giving to them? And the answer is, pretty much nothing. It's a negligible change. These kinds of stats are also often associated with random loot, right? Which doesn't give you much control over how you want to play the game. So yeah, I too dislike this.
I think it's trying to give you a false sense of character customization.
Yes.
Like my character excels in critical. Now, granted, I only have 4% more chance than you, but that's what I excel in.
Almost like those ad slogans when it's like, a new flavor of Coke, like Coke Zero when they change their flavor. Coke Zero now with more flavor. And it's like, oh, I don't know. It still tastes like a soda to me.
It tastes mostly the same.
Yeah, it tastes mostly the same. I don't know. Honey, does this taste the same to you? Do I have 4% extra crit damage to you?
I think this is handled best in old school RPGs. I'm thinking of like old Final Fantasies where they're like, you're going into this magnetic dungeon and any Metal Gear will fuck you over. So
Metal Gear?
Yes, Metal Gear. So equip any like, I don't know, wood gear or something you have, or you're going through the poison swamps. Equip your anti-poison gear now, and it's just null poison. Like I think it should just be all or nothing, because then I will keep specific gear around.
Yeah, as someone who hates skill trees, as you can see from this list that nobody else can see, I am all aboard this because most skill trees are like, I don't know, your healing spell now does 1% more healing. Congrats!
Yeah.
See you next time to get an extra 1%.
In games like WoW, where if you're like a healer specialty, you should just be a touch better. I don't know. I feel like that's okay in that kind of game, but I feel like people took the lessons of WoW and applied it where it doesn't need to be applied.
Yes, absolutely.
So, because like percentage differences can make like people that obsess over raid builds and crap like that, they're going to notice that 2% extra DPS you're causing. I think in those kind of games, whatever, you got to do what you got to do. But
I guess like a single player game.
But for single player games, keep that crap out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even in multiplayer, when I think of this kind of stat system and progression, what I think of is Diablo.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which has always kind of straddled the line between single player and multiplayer. And even in that game, it's so incremental and random, and oftentimes, in Diablo in particular, I won't go on too long about this, but I don't like that genre because it is kind of more about just blindly click, 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 and clear the screen, clear the screen, clear the screen, and then you instantly die.
Yeah.
And stats in Diablo, they might change what skills you're clicking and the order you click them in, but it doesn't really offer like a qualitative change in the gameplay. Like I think a game that does stats well is Monster Hunter, actually, where you have like set packages of perks with multiple levels tied to armor, and the customization is about determining like what perks improve the gameplay the most in your opinion, and figuring out the best way to put those together. And you can very easily use calculators for this, so you don't have to like take a ton of time.
Well, I mean, I look at Diablo as like, how people put on solitaire or something when they're bored and they don't want to think about something, they're just clicking mindlessly. I think like Diablo is kind of like that, where it's just like, I'm not going to think, I'm just going to click, 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 click. So I'm kind of with you on that.
Here on that one.
Well then, Cheston, what is your second item that you wish to nominate?
I risked the wrath of Derek with this one. I'm here to say that experience points suck.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
So here's my, what would they call this on a YouTube essay? Here is my thesis. So think back on the origins of experience points as far as I know them, which is not super in depth. But I always think of it as a holdover from early tabletop role-playing games, like Dungeons and Dragons. You gain experience points by fighting these monsters, and you use those experience points to. Okay, well, hold on, we'll get there. You can well actually me at some point. I feel like we'll agree, but it's the historical part that I might be a little wrong on. But either way,
sure.
You get experience points for one reason or another. When you get more of them, you level up, yada yada, so on and so forth. I think in a tabletop sense, it can make some sense to have experience points, because at some point you are talking about things. You can't actually do these things. Your interaction with the game is purely talking or writing things down, So how are you going to help people feel like they're progressing? I guess experience points make some sense. But in video games, a lot of times it is extremely lazy. And I'm going to use an example that I don't like, which is God of War 2018. Now, in God of War 2018, you gain experience points. In a normal God of War game, where you do not gain experience points, well, I mean, you gain something kind of like it, but either way, you don't gain outright experience points. In an original game, you would fight your battles, and as the game progresses, you would unlock new abilities based on things happening in the narrative that would open up new combat avenues for you. And they would have all kinds of creative ways to introduce these things. Like, I remember in God of War 3, at some point you get the ability to, I'm having to remember something I did 10 years ago now. I'm pretty sure it was like an ability to freeze things in place, Medusa style. And you get it by ripping off a Medusa character type's head. Apologies to God of War 3 fans if I messed up the details there. I do know that you rip off somebody's head and use their head to accomplish things. It's built into the narrative and it adds a new layer to the gameplay. But in God of War 2018, a lot of your abilities are only locked behind experience points. So basically, they have a combat system that is incomplete, and they have gated it off behind experience points that you gain throughout the game. And as you get more experience points, you build out your repertoire until by the end of the game, it's actually sufficient. But the only reason that it is gated is, as far as I can tell, because they felt like they needed to gate it. And they didn't feel like they could have a more organic way to integrate it throughout the game. It wasn't like they could have Kratos see a vision of something and be like, oh, I guess I can smash the ground and push everyone back around me because I had this flashback, Fallen Order style. I just think that a lot of times it is a lazy way of having a player feel like they are progressing without really doing much other than giving them things they should have had to begin with. And I also hate grinding, so screw grinding. It's bad.
Well, I certainly agree with you. I don't think every single stinking game needs an EXP system. Certainly for stuff like God of War. I was playing Sonic Adventure 2, and you just get your power-ups when you find them. And I don't see what's wrong with that. Like, that's how it should be. Like, your game, that's what you said.
That's how it should. That is absolutely the way that it is supposed to be.
Right. Like, I don't see what you fight a bunch of enemies and throwing like all your EXP points into giving you a boost into attack damage. I don't think that's fun.
I mean, imagine if in Metroid, instead of finding this gear through exploring and fighting these monsters and doing all this other stuff, it was just like, oh, I got 100 experience points, so if I cash that in, now I have the Varia suit, so now I can walk on lava. Like, instead of thinking of a way to get Samus into that suit, it's just like, oh, well, I guess if they gain enough points, they can get that suit. And they can go run crazy.
I'm with you in basically everything that is not a turn-based RPG, because I kind of like the progression there. But, I just don't... I'm with you. Like, I don't need that stuff. Just give me what I want.
Can I use this as a chance to curry favor with you and say that I think Final Fantasy X did it right?
Yes,
I think
go ahead.
that Final Fantasy X had the right idea. Like, creating a system where you could really build your character that wasn't based around, like, leveling up and getting arbitrary number of points.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of cool.
Well, that game gives you a real customization feeling if you play with the expert sphere grid on.
Like, would Final Fantasy IX be any worse of a game if instead of having experience points, you just, like, that ability point system was, or the ability system is how you managed your character and progressed them? Like, that to me was the more interesting part of that game than making Steiner's number go really high. It was giving Steiner that ability that makes him a freaking 9,999 damage point threat every turn.
It was about making choices as opposed to just making numbers inflate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that was not the fun part of that RPG, nor is it the fun part of, from what I can tell, any RPG. Like, to me, that is another way, just like some of the other things we mentioned, that is a way to pad the experience. Like, oh, I need more experience points, so I guess I got to do some more of this to make things happen.
But in JRPGs, like, that's the gameplay. Like, if you don't like the gameplay, that's fine. Like,
but I do like the gameplay, but I don't think that experience points are a necessary part of that gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, you can like the gameplay and not want to play it for 90 hours.
What's the interesting part of Final Fantasy VII? It's not the experience points, it's the materia.
Right,
and the
but
story.
I don't grind in JRPGs. Like, if I have to, I drop them. So,
well, right.
So the XP system, it's part of the. I don't know.
I think there's a small amount of RPGs where I can't see a way around an experience point system. Like, I think for Pokemon, for example, the idea is that you're raising these creatures from birth in some cases to make them battling badasses. I guess it makes some amount of sense that you would train them, and just like in the real world, the more you do something, the better you get. The more the Pokemon fight, the better they get at fighting. I guess that makes sense, but when you're playing Final Fantasy VII, you are playing as an ex-military badass. Like, he is good at fighting. Like, the more interesting progression system there would be like, oh, as Cloud explores, he found some more materia, so he's gonna pop that into his sword, and look at this cool shit he can do now. Like, and you could have that integrated naturally into the story, as they do in the case of some of that materia. And as they do in Final Fantasy IX with some of the abilities that you gain along the way.
I agree with you 100%, but I do want to make a little historical correction.
Thank you. I needed that.
Because it does have ramifications for how this system's been adopted into video games, which is that in ancient D&D, you got experience points not for killing monsters, but for getting treasure, bringing treasure out of the dungeon and into town, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
And this is important because it incentivizes you to do what? Get treasure, not fight monsters who can kill you, and then you lose all of your treasure. Okay. It's about getting the treasure. And this is important in turn because XP was more for levels, and levels were more about prestige. You didn't get like new features and abilities that came in later games. It was really a measure of like your notoriety more than anything, and your stats did kind of go up, but mostly it was about your notoriety. And the way you progressed in power was that you were spending that gold. So you got experience, but you also had the gold to spend. You could buy castles, get in with the local aristocracy, that sort of stuff, and increase your prestige, your influence, your ability that way. And then, when you're in the dungeon and you're getting this gold, what else is there? There's also, magic items, magic weapons, magic spells down in the dungeon that you were also retrieving. So really, XP is like just you magically get an ability, and it's the end-all be-all of your progression. Is very much a video game concept that kind of flowed back into tabletop games. And a lot of newer tabletop games actually have moved away from that kind of paradigm. Because, as you said, in the case of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud is ex-military. He's good at fighting. In the case of an RPG, why not just say, yeah, my guy is good at fighting, and what's more interesting is the qualitative change of finding a flaming sword or a magic shield or whatever, and that opens up options, right? And changes how people perceive me in the world, right? Stuff like that.
This is all my Trojan horse way of saying that the Origami King, Paper Mario the Origami King, is actually a very good game, Derek, and it didn't need experience points to make it a good game.
Yeah, they should have just cut out like half the battles you fight.
No!
A good game.
I just never liked the argument that it's, and this is what always comes down to.
That game did not need EXP, but it needed fewer battles.
Hold on. It's just the idea that like a lot of people, when it comes to RPGs, they go, well, if you don't have experience points, then why would you even bother with the battles? And to me, that is a self-defeating argument, because then at that point it's like, okay, well, if the only reason you're playing this combat system is because you're going to make numbers go up, then why are you even playing this game to begin with?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, but with Origami King, the battles are puzzles, and so when you fight,
Fun puzzles.
sure, but when you've
Puzzles.
solved them once and you have to do the same puzzle multiple times, it is annoying, and there are many times you have to do that. So yes, unless you're really good at evading random battles.
Well, the game gives you tools to do that, which you get by exploring and not through experience points.
Yes, but the fact that you still have to do those battles is annoying.
You know what game has good progression and no XP?
What's that?
Monster Hunter.
Yeah, that it does.
Just saying.
That it does. That is a perfect progression game.
Yeah, that is a good point because you don't see anybody bitching about that game not having experience points.
Exactly. You don't get XP for fighting monsters. You get to make
their gear.
choices.
You get to make sweet ass bone swords.
Yeah. And that has a qualitative impact on your gameplay.
You take their fur and make it into a cool coat.
You are 100% correct. That is good.
So are we just saying that Monster Hunter is the definitive video game experience?
Yeah, it is. It's if you boil it down. If you boil it down,
I wouldn't go that far.
It does a lot of things well. We'll say that.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Setzer, what's your second one?
I'm gonna say one thing I really hate. Can I do a quick little snack and then a real one?
You can do what you want.
Okay. So real quick, I just have to say it. I have to get it out of my system. I hate wacky cosmetics in games.
Me
like
too.
Halo Infinite. That game has very beautiful art direction, and then you see a guy running around with like a clown suit and pineapple grenades and like a pizza decal on his gun, and I just don't like it. I think that it just trashes the hard work of coming on that artistic vision. Redditors pay a lot of money for this crap, but it's just annoying. It's just ugly. I hate it.
And I say I'm with you. However, I was actually just talking about this last night. I don't like it in Fortnite, especially when you have cases. Well, one, because I think the art in Fortnite is bad, and so when you bring in these other properties, you're making them look bad. Like when they had the xenomorph in Fortnite, and it looked ridiculous, sullying the good name of Alien. But I was playing Fall Guys last night, and I was saying that I think in that game it really works because it's based on things like MXC and Takeshi's Castle. Contestants on those shows would often dress up in really wacky things as they did
that is a game that's tonally wacky.
So that absolutely makes sense for that game. I love seeing people walk around in their wacky outfits. But you're right. If it's Halo Infinite and you've got like all these, you're right. Beautiful art direction, and then you got this weirdo in a rainbow-colored cat
Rick and Morty
helmet.
Yeah.
Like what? Like that doesn't fit at all. It takes you way out of the experience.
So thank you, Team Fortress 2. You're to blame for this bullshit.
Team Fortress 2 had a great aesthetic though.
But we know that's what it was.
Yes. Yeah, another game that's really bad about this, Guild Wars 2. They added like unironic scene and emo outfits and hairstyles. And it just destroys that game. It just looks hideous. You can get devil wings, you can get giant sparkly particle effects constantly gushing from your character. And it's awful. It's just awful. It's gaudy. It's hideous. I hate it. I just hate it. But the real thing I hate, okay, and this is going to be a controversial one, ephemeral rewards. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording. I don't like disposable rewards in games. I want more qualitative options to accumulate as I progress through the game, right?
You want trophies of your progress.
Not just trophies, but things that I can use, I can choose to use or not use to change my experience with the game and bring some more novelty into the moment-to-moment gameplay. And a great game that falls into this trap is Breath of the Wild.
I'm just glad you said it was a great game.
Yes, I mean, I like that game. Don't get me wrong. It has problems, but I do overall really like it. The weapon durability system in Breath of the Wild is way, way, way overtuned. Weapons are way too disposable. And when you complete a shrine or you open a chest out in the world, way too often it's just another sword that you think, oh great, I'll use this for 30 seconds and then it'll break, and it'll be as if I never had this thing in the first place. I never did this thing in the first place. All of the weapons in that game are essentially disposable. All of them are very homogenous. And I think that by making the reward for that so disposable, it really diminishes the value of actually doing it. Given that the activities in that game, like the shrines, are oftentimes tied into things that are more permanent and more logical and more experiential and a lot of fun, and like on their own merit, just intrinsically. And then you kind of have this extrinsic reward that doesn't really contribute to your decision making or your puzzle solving or logical decision making or moment to moment gameplay in the grander world of Breath of the Wild. You know what I mean?
Yes, you do get the spirit orbs.
The spirit orbs are not qualitative. They just give you more hearts or more stamina.
Well, that does dramatically improve your experience.
Not really.
The stamina does.
Kinda. I mean, I have 2 wheels of stamina, and after that, I don't think you need more.
I don't disagree with you about
Yeah.
any of this. I think there certainly could be a way to include rewards that don't feel like you're just going to throw them away 2 seconds later. Like Borderlands is the game that I think of when you say this. Because Borderlands' whole gimmick is we have a million randomly generated weapons. And so you often will find treasure chests full of loot that are just like 1,000 of these guns. And even if you use one, you're probably only going to use it for like 10 minutes. And then it's going to be on to the next one. So it's hard to ever get caught up, and feel attached to your prize. It's just like, whatever.
So this is kind of like maybe a looter shooter problem, also like big time. Like I'm thinking of and not just looter shooter, like loot games like Diablo, Stranger Paradise, also like this. Like I got rewards and like immediately the next dungeon I play, immediately outclassed within 5 minutes of it. Like I think wanting some permanence out of your task is probably normal. Like I if I do something that takes me 30 minutes, I should get more than 5 minutes out of whatever I get from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally see and agree with what you're saying.
Isn't it just kind of cynical that you're kind of hooked into this like cycle of disposable stuff? You know what I mean? I mean, you just kind of like I open that chest, and before it even finishes opening, I just roll my eyes because I know my weapon inventory is full, and I either just leave this thing laying on the ground, or I throw something out, and I have this for like one fight.
Well, yeah, it greatly diminishes the value of epic quest lines because I'm thinking like, why would I spend an hour doing this long quest with all this story content and the reward is a sword, or I can go out to the field and kill a moblin and get a sword of roughly the same value. I mean, it's just it kind of diminishes what otherwise would be very worthwhile content.
I had this experience lately with an older Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Every time I open a chest and it's a goddamn rupee, I just want to throw the chest into the water.
Rupees are the most useless piece of shit.
They are so the rupee economy is so inflated. It makes their own economy look stable. It's like I have already got 99 rupees 10 minutes into this game, and I find this cool thing under a rock, and I open the treasure chest like, oh baby, it's a heart piece, baby. Oh boy, maybe it's a bomb bag. Oh man, and then it's like, it's 50 rupees. And I can't do them. I can't pocket them because I don't have a big enough wallet.
The most useless upgrade in that game is the Giant's wallet, which is 500 rupees, because by the time you get it, you don't need that much money ever. So it's the worst. You're totally right. I hate rupees.
I hate getting rupees in chests. I get enough of them in the environment from pots, from grass, from monsters. Stop.
Only put it in there if it's 100 rupees or more.
Right. If it's 20, man, every once in a while you open one, it's a 5 rupee piece.
I just want to throw my controller.
It's just, I just want to find, I want to dox Shigeru Miyamoto. Or sorry, no, I want to dox Anuma. And I want to, I don't know.
It makes me want to swat Miyamoto.
Yeah. Like he's on his Twitch stream talking about Chris-san. And just like, oh, I've got a knock at the door. Hold on. Oh, shit.
I swear that mushroom makes me bigger. It's not for anything particular.
No, I'm not Chris-san. You're not Chris-san. No.
No. That is a good one, Setzer.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think what a brilliant analysis of capitalism that these games provide. These disposable rewards. Who wants them?
Everything is tedious. Nothing's worthwhile.
Yes.
Very good.
Real quick, one last note on that topic. You know what game doesn't have disposable rewards?
Monster Hunter.
Monster Hunter.
Oh boy, the perfect video game. All the pieces coming together.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I have a couple that I think everyone can get on board with, but that's not fun because like everyone hates gacha. Everyone hates Ubisoft Towers. So let's talk about ice levels and platforming games.
I'm listening.
By far the most annoying trope in these things. So I think the best part of platforming games, or what makes them stand out, is ease of movement. Like the ability to, I don't know, move wherever you want, however you want, is important. Ice levels just takes this away from you. It completely changes the physics system for one level that you're not going to have to mess with again, and it makes moving not fun. Whenever I see an ice level coming up in a game, it's like, oh fuck, here we go. I'm going to have to slide around everywhere, time my jumps all differently, like be extra cautious when I'm moving, because if you like press the D-pad right and just a fraction too long, you're sliding off a cliff. It sucks. It always brings a sense of dread when I see it. I think ice levels serve best as background scenery, or like just not messing with your movement. Think of Mario's 3D World ice levels, where your movements, like when you're on the ice specifically, it's different, but the physics are changed in a way that's kind of fun. I don't know, like you're like ice skating around everywhere, that sort of thing.
So this is what I was gonna say as an addendum to your thing.
Yeah.
Because I agree for 2D platformers.
Yes.
But don't feel like 3D games have this problem, because, as you mentioned, 3D World, when you're on the ice, yes, your movement is slippery, but you also have a different degree of movement. You can ice skate, and you can do some like kind of funny jumps. And in Galaxy, it really opens things up when you're on the ice in a really fun way, I think. But you're totally right. For, I don't know, I think Mega Man 2, Mega Man 1, the Iceman stage, I think that has some ice areas that make you slip, and that sucks. It's just, Mega Man is already a little too, easily swayed with movement. So you add that ice, you take away friction, and it becomes a giant pain to get through those levels.
Yes, with what you were saying on Mario, it helps with level design. Like if you design your levels differently and not just make another level but with slippery floors, it's fine. But like I seem to remember like ice levels in Balan Wonderworld, which were this kind of shit where you're just sliding everywhere and it's not fun. It's not precise. It is definitely more of a 2D platformer problem than a 3D one.
I was gonna, like, usually on these I've been thinking like, what's a good example of this? But I can't really with ice levels besides the 3D ones. So what's the worst one of these that you can remember?
Mario 3, the like ice levels, like the one bad level in that game, like the world.
Okay. A whole world. Yeah. Pretty bad.
As you said, Mega Man 1, the Iceman stage is brutal. Especially the fading blocks. Because those also have slippery mechanics too, and they fade in and out, so it makes it really annoying. That's probably the worst of it. But those are ancient games. New Super Mario Brothers has this too.
Oh yeah, those are bad. If there's a 2D game I was just thinking of.
Strangely, Sonic just kind of ignores it. He just moves
Sonic
normally.
gets away with it. Does Donkey Kong Country, does that ice level have slipperiness?
Yes, it does.
Okay, that's a bad level. I don't like that level.
One of the worst levels in the game, and an
Yep.
otherwise masterpiece. Tropical Freeze ignores this, luckily, because all of that game is ice level. But yeah, I mean, it's not really a modern problem. There are some, like New Super Mario Bros., as I said, but
yeah, I think it is probably a modern problem.
Balan does not count. It is a stupid game made by stupid people.
Honestly, it might control totally the same, but you're just like, the movement in that game is so bad that you're like, what? Freaking ice level. There's everything on ice level.
Was there ice climates in Pikmin?
Pikmin has ice climates, but it does not affect your movement. That would be such an odd choice.
For whatever reason, I just pictured like Olimar slipping around.
No, doesn't the ice level in Smash Brothers have ice physics?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
and it's not fun.
We don't often play that level. That is a brawl holdover right there.
Yeah, it is a brawl holdover.
Oh, Sakurai, you silly Billy.
You sly dog. This obviously won't win, but it's something I really hate and want to bring up. So.
Just for a moment, total sidebar. In the credits for Mega Man 1 on the Wily, or Mega Man 2 on the Wily Wars, it refers to, or no, actually, maybe it's 3. It refers to Iceman as the Arctic Expedition robot.
Oh my. Arctic Exploration Ike has some buddies.
So I guess we should change it to Arctic Expedition Ike.
Maybe.
In the future. But I digress.
I want to add that I chose ice levels because when everyone talks about levels they hate, they always talk about swimming levels, water levels, which do suck. But I want to highlight another bad water thing.
Yeah, unlike I can think of sometimes where water levels do not totally suck, but I cannot think of the same for ice levels other than those 2 3D Mario games we mentioned. Because the ice stuff in Mario 64 is also not fun. So,
but the water stuff in Mario 64 is worse. That dry world is the worst level in that game.
Oh, you're right. But I don't think it's because of the water. I think it's because
it's because it sucks. The layout sucks.
It's a bad layout, and God, there's that red coin mission in the little town.
Yeah, the little town. I hate it.
Oh, that. If this were a worst Mario 64 worlds based on mechanics, then Wet Dry World and its water switching mechanism would be a winner in a runaway.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we have went through our things. It appears 2 was the perfect amount for the time we had.
Uh-huh.
So what do you think was the worst of these?
I will start. I think the worst of these, and I think worst in a sense, a combination of bothering me and also creating bad precedents that other games can adopt. I think the 2 that really stick out to me are ephemeral rewards and experience points.
Okay. What about you, Setzer?
I'm going to go with... It's hard to pick only 2.
And these are pretty bad. We did a good job picking bad ones.
Yeah. I'm going to say experience points and odd-numbered stats is tied with ephemeral rewards.
All right, well, I'm going to say ephemeral rewards and odd number stats.
Well, if we do it in a purely math sense, as game logic would dictate, so I guess, does that make ephemeral rewards the worst of this week's?
Well, because I look at my odd number stats, and that is kind of bundled into ephemeral rewards. If you think
it really is. And I actually had color-coded loot on my list.
That's the same sort of thing?
But it's basically the same idea, is that you have all this meaningless gear that only meaning is imbued by a color given to its name.
Yeah.
And it is ultimately ephemeral because if you think about a game like Diablo, you are getting good, well, quote-unquote, good gear for you every single encounter. And it is so disposable, and it just makes for a very bland experience, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, I also had item level on my list, which is the same exact thing. Pad out your experience through a quantitative grind.
It feels like this is the origin point for a lot of things we hate, so it's pretty logical that this would win. Not to be math about it, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So we will incinerate ephemeral rewards, and we will only get a fleeting satisfaction from it. as is appropriate.
Yeah, ephemeral rewards will join our Hall of Shame, along with what were the games that were on there? Just
Oh, the disappointing games Hall of Shame.
no, the Redemption.
Yeah, I know, Redemption Arc. Yeah,
Yeah.
the disappointing games Hall of
Yeah,
Shame.
what
Banjo
joined?
Kazooie Nuts and Bolts and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite certainly were there, and we did not put Sunshine on there.
Well, there you go. Joining Banjo Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts, and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is ephemeral rewards. I like to think we would do a positive topic once and get like a
I was
Hall of
thinking
Fame.
that we could do like best mechanics too.
Yes, we could.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
all sorts of fun special episodes we could do. So we'll have a Hall of Fame and a Hall of Shame. So no entries in the Hall of Fame yet, but maybe one day.
And maybe one day we'll revisit some of these and put them in the Hall of Shame too.
Well, I think so.
You're not off the hook, experience points.
No, you are not.
Your day may come.
Ice levels. I'm looking at you, buddy. No one nominated you for worst, but you suck.
It could be like the Toy Hall of Fame, where every year they just like randomly say, you know what? It's time for Yo-Yo. It's like, well, this is the time. Ice levels. You finally paid your dues. You are in the Hall of Shame.
But that will do it for us this week. You can reach us on Twitter at AllTodayPod or email alltodaypodcast@gmail.com. This is Derek.
Setzer.
And Chesson.
We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Adios.
Bye now.
遊びの道に魂込めた一人の男が今日も行く真面目に遊ばぬ奴らには体で覚えさせるぞ